Welcome back to Simple Truth. Hey, we're in the story of Joseph. We're like two-thirds of the way through it. Lots of things we pulled out, practical things about pits and servanthood and all kinds of stuff. We're now at the part of the story where Joseph is getting the dream, right? He's getting everything that God had promised him. Down here, we have this person who is consistently reminding us about not forgetting God, right? What happens when you get what you want? What happens when you get, right? All the things that God has promised you. Don't forget me. Don't forget me. Don't forget me. God is so clear on that in the Old Testament. He's very concerned about that, right? I think one of the reasons that God doesn't give us everything right away is that point right there, right? He draws it out and goes through the process because he wants to ensure that we aren't forgetting him, right? So now Joseph is been handed everything that God had promised him. The dream was really simple. People are going to bow down to you, right? Even your brothers and your father are going to bow down to him. So again, if Joseph was like the rest of us, he would have taken it and said like, "Oh, the dream's great, I got it," right? Because the whole rest of the world is going to bow down to him. He's second in command. Dreams are specific, right? So it's not fulfilled unless it happens the way that God says it's going to happen. And his two dreams were about his brothers and his mother and his father bowing down to him, right? It's really important because I can remember having a conversation with somebody once and they were telling me some details about, what God was going to give them. And then they got it perceivably. And I asked them about the details. I said, "Well, wait, was this in there?" And they're like, "No, but it had this and this and this." And I'm like, but then it's not God, right? It's the enemy getting you to compromise. It's the enemy getting you to settle for just a little bit less than what you were promised, right? So the enemy always wants to be like me, with cooking, right? When we're cooking, we set the timer for 25 minutes, and then we just assume it's done, right? Or if you're like me, you at the 20-minute mark you check it to see if it's done enough, right? The timer says 25 minutes. Most things take even a little bit longer, but we want it to be a little bit early, and the enemy knows that about us. He knows that God's plan for you is set on time. It's perfectly timed. So he tries to get you to either undercook it or overcook it. He tries to get you to look at it and say like, "Hey, I'm going to take advantage of this early, right? I want this early." And that's exactly what time after time, right, we run in with the story of Joseph. God could have lifted him up here, but God didn't. Right? But the enemy did. And guess what? Joseph could have looked at his time in prison and he could have said, "Well, that's the dream. The dream was people were going to bow down to me. People were going to, serve me. He's like, "Yeah, I'm in charge of the prison. People are doing that." But that's not what God had told him. So let me read a little bit, probably a little bit of review, right? In verse 37, it says, "This proposal pleased Pharaoh and all of his servants. Pharaoh said to his servants, 'Can we find a man like this in whom is the Spirit of God?'" Talked about that. The fact that, hey, Pharaoh saw Joseph, but he also saw God in the situation. Pharaoh said to Joseph, "Since God has shown you all this, there is no discerning. There is none so discerning and wise as you are. Only as regards to the throne will I be greater than you." Pharaoh said to Joseph, "See, I've set all the land of Egypt." Then Pharaoh took his signet ring from his hand, put it on Joseph's hand, clothed him in garments of fine linen, and put a gold chain around his neck. And he made him ride in a second chariot. And they called out before him, "Bow the knee." That's super significant because God's dream that he gave was about bowing down, bow the knee. Right? So now we got specifics playing in. If Joseph had just ridden around in a chariot, people recognized him as being in command, all those things, that's close, but it's not close enough for God, right? God has the desire to play out the details of what he has told you. Hold on for those details. Don't settle for almost. Now, are there times where we take what God has given us and we just blow it out of proportion, or we say, "Hey, no, it's got to look like this"? Listen, if God tells you that your future spouse is going to have black hair, she's going to have black hair. If God says she's going to have red hair, she's going to have red hair. So if you just settle for a blonde-haired girl, right, that's not what God told you. But if God didn't tell you that, and you just prefer, right, then that's not a God thing, right? That's not a God told you, thus saith the Lord. Right? If God told you about a specific job, God said, hey, you're going to be doing this. If God told you about a specific church, a specific ministry, specific kids, if God's giving you a picture of kids, right, you would settle, right, for less than that. Right? You go with what God has promised you. That's really important. Abraham settled for close enough. Right? Other people were close enough, like Moses. Moses was told by God, don't hit the rock this time, speak to it. I want my people to see there's a difference. I want them to see that I'm the one doing this, not you. Right? Because otherwise, what they're going to do is start following Moses around and be like, Moses, can you hit that rock over there? I'm thirsty. Hey, Moses, what about that rock? Can you hit it? I'm thirsty. Right? God says, no, I want to provide. So what does Moses do? He gets angry and he hits the rock, just like he did the first time. And God says, nope, nope, nope. You got the glory now, Moses. You stole my glory. It cost Moses the promised land. Right? Moses didn't go to the promised land because he was disobedient. He was angry. He stole God's glory. So we don't do that, right? Joseph, right, all of a sudden is elevated, but God's specific promise came in. He saw his mom, his dad, and his brothers bowing down before him. His brothers hated the dream. His father pondered the dream, right? When we hate a dream, when we hate a vision, when we hate what God tells somebody because of jealousy, we do really terrible things with that. But when we ponder what God is doing within somebody's life, we give room for the Holy Spirit to work. We give room for God to work, which is exactly what happened here, right? So this is about God, right, fulfilling his promise, his dream. Has God made you some promises? Has God put some specifics within those promises? If he has, he's not going to be slow in keeping those promises. It's going to happen exactly on time. Notice, Joseph wanted the cupbearer and the baker to remember him 2 years earlier. What if those two had gone right out, gone right to Pharaoh, said, hey, this guy told us about a dream? Joseph would have been out, maybe not, but maybe he would have been out way away from Pharaoh when time for interpreting the dreams was. Hey, maybe God has you exactly where he wants you, because when he lifts you up, you need to be in that spot. Maybe you need to be in that workplace. Maybe you need to be in that church. Maybe you need to be with that, whatever. And God's like, I'm going to lift you up. I'm going to lift you up at the exact right moment in the exact right spot. Funny, Joseph was exactly where Pharaoh needed him to be, in a prison with people who remembered, right? Are you exactly where God needs you to be? Maybe in a prison, right where somebody else is going to remember you. Someone else is going to say, hey, hey, hey. And you're going to be able to be lifted in. So challenging you with that thought today on Simple Truth.